Yo, what is up guys, it's your girl Bex and welcome back to the Race Rundown. This week we have something a little bit special for you. I'm calling it Formula 1 101. This is for the people that are new to the sport. It's going to be a quick rundown of why you should watch it, what makes Formula 1 great, the structure of the sport, the cars, the technology, the teams, the drivers, the formats, how the race works, strategy, drama, rules, regulations, everything you need to know packaged down into 20 minutes. So before we get started, if you could drop me a like, drop me a follow, that would be hugely appreciated. Trying to build this audience here. Basically, the bigger the audience, the more I can give to you. So let's crack on, shall we? Why should you watch Formula 1? Now that is the important question. The world's best drivers in the most technologically advanced cars, racing wheel to wheel around the globe. What could be better? And here's the thing, I hear you say, what could be better than that? A little bit of drama maybe for all our reality TV junkies. Well, have I got news for you. There's politics involved, there's engineering, there's drama, there's weather and strategy, there's everything you could possibly need, plus a little cheeky bit of Drive to Survive and behind the scenes social media content. What could be better? The sport has a massive rich history, as we know, that I will go into in another episode, and is becoming more accessible than ever with streaming platforms, social media, Sky F1, podcasts like this, you name it, you can get started at any point. So, the basic structure. Formula 1's season is called a World Championship, for those that don't know, made of around 24 races. This can change based season to season. Sometimes we've had 23, sometimes we've had 24, all hosted in different countries around the world. This changes every now and then. We get a couple of additions, we get a couple taken out. Rest in peace, Imola. Then drivers score points based on the finishing position. So you get 25 points for a win, you get 18 points for second, 15 points for third, down to 1 point for 10th. So basically finish in the top 10 and you'll be fine. The two championships that are up for grabs throughout the entire season is the Drivers' Championship, which is the driver with the most points at the end of the season, and there's also the Constructors' Championship, the team with the most combined points from both drivers. Not a singular driver, both drivers. Both provide not only personal glory, but prize money, extended time for the car for the season ahead, that kind of thing. I would like to point out that the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship can be won by separate people, obviously, because it's two drivers for the Constructors, one driver for the Drivers' Championship. So, last year, Max won the Drivers' Championship, McLaren won the Constructors' Championship, so it makes it a little bit more interesting. Even if your personal driver favourite doesn't win, your favourite team can still win. Anyway, enough about that. The cars and the technology. Each car is designed and built by the team within FIA regulations. You've probably heard me, if you listen to the podcast up until now, screaming and shouting about the FIA and the rules that they make that annoy the fuck out of me. And yeah, they do. And if you go on to love the sport as much as I do, you will understand why. No two cars are exactly the same, despite it being called Formula 1. We're not going to go into that. The engines in the current cars are hybrid units, a turbocharged 1.6 litre V6 paired with an electric motor. We're not going to go into different engine types. My personal favourite was a V10. However, this one will do. They're efficient, powerful. The aerodynamics is everything. So alongside the engine, you then have the aerodynamics. You have the wings, you have the diffusers, you have the complex surfaces to generate down. For those that don't know, because we're going straight back to basics with this, F1 101, downforce is basically gluing the car to the track using air, basically. Science and technology working hand in hand. Technologia. Teams spend huge amounts of time in the wind tunnels and simulators to shave off even a fraction of a second, because that can make all the difference, even down to how much the driver weighs. How much the driver weighs before a race can make all the difference in terms of how to calculate the best possible race time for the car, the fuel and the driver together. Bearing in mind they have water on board as well, so that adds weight as well. The teams and the drivers. Now I hear you ask, what teams do we have? Well, so we have McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, Williams, Aston Martin, Kick Sauber, Racing Bulls, Haas and Alpine. Each have 2 drivers. So for McLaren we have Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. Ferrari we have Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes we have George Russell, Kimi Antonelli. Red Bull Racing we have Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda. Williams we have Alexander Albon and Carlos Sainz. Aston Martin we have Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso. Kick Sauber has Nico Hülkenberg and Gabriel Bortoleto. Racing Bulls Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar. Haas we have Esteban Ocon and Oli Bearman. Alpine we have Pierre Gasly and Franco Colapinto. This changes depending on when they're out of contracts. You'll probably hear me talking about this towards the latter half of the year, because there's lots of drivers that are out of contract either this year or next year, so we will touch on that at a later date. Each team is a massive organisation, so yes, they have their 2 drivers, but they also have the team principals. They have the heads of the racing team, CEOs, they have engineers, mechanics, strategists, data analysts, social media team, but ultimately it comes down to the team principal to make the big decisions. The drivers have to obviously train to have lightning reflexes, insane endurance and the ability to operate at limit whilst managing strategy and communication with the team without losing their rag. All eyes looking at you, Charles Leclerc. So they have neck training to deal with the G-force, they go to the gym, they keep their weight right. Basically it's an all year round slog. So when you say all year round, Bex, what do you mean? So for those that don't know, we have the racing format. This changes from time to time because sometimes we have sprint races. I don't talk about sprint races because I don't like them. But the typical race format that is not a race sprint weekend. Friday, free practice 1, free practice 2. This is where the team sets up the tyres and the strategy, tests different setups. Relatively boring. Sorry, but it is relatively boring. Saturday morning, free practice, FP3, final chance to dial in the car before qualifying on Saturday afternoon. This is split into Q1, Q2 and Q3. These are knockout rounds to set the grid for Sunday's race. So in Q1, the slowest 5 drivers are eliminated at the end. Starting positions for the race are then determined based on the fastest lap during that session. Q2 lasts for 15 minutes and the remaining 15 drivers are allowed to participate, set the fastest lap to get a place in Q3. Again, the 5 slowest drivers are then eliminated in Q2 to make the back of the grid. Q3 lasts 12 minutes and the remaining 10 drivers are allowed to participate. The aim of the game is to set the fastest lap to determine the starting position for the race. The driver who sets the fastest lap in Q3 will start from pole position, with the rest of the drivers lining up in descending order from their lap time. So that is the general gist of a race weekend format, with obviously Sunday being race day, 1 formation lap, Crofty says lights out and away we go, flat out to the finish. The pit strategy is determined on the day. So how the race works, this is where it starts to get difficult because there's tyre compounds and all sorts of different things. So the start is normally pretty intense. They finish the formation lap, everybody lines up. Sometimes there's some hefty crashes into turn 1, which is always fun. So you have the soft compound tyres as well. So the tyre compounds, you have the soft compound tyre, fastest and wears out quickly. Medium, balanced for performance and durability. Hards, you get the slowest but the longest. So the hards last the longest but they're the slowest typically. Pit stops are normally within 2 and 3 seconds if it's a good pit stop. The safety car or a virtual safety car slows down the race for incidents. These can be implemented, say if somebody goes off the track and is coming back on, or if there's debris or something that needs clearing up. This can flip the strategy completely on its head. And red flags pause the race entirely for major incidents such as weather, crashes, that kind of stuff. So different pit strategies. Oftentimes you'll hear things from the commentary team such as undercut, overcut. So the undercut is pitting earlier to get faster laps when behind a competitor you want to get in front of, for example. An overcut, on the other hand, is staying out longer to gain position. This can help you win or lose the race. Weather often adds chaos. Switching between dry and wet tyres can make or break a race. Team orders sometimes come into play. McLaren rules, as you might hear throughout 2025, which always stirs up a fan debate. I don't personally believe in team orders. I think they should race. However, sometimes it's needed. Rivalries between teammates, we're seeing that with Lando and Oscar this year, or different drivers from different teams. This is all part of the show. There's been a few over time. So the FIA runs the Formula 1 track limits. If you go off too far, you get penalties as deemed by the race stewards who are working for the FIA. Time penalties, grid penalties, or even disqualifications for breaking rules. Budget cap was introduced to keep spending in check because a lot of the field had more money, so they needed to try and keep it as simple as possible across the board. Technological regulations change every few years to improve safety, promote closer racing, and control costs. So we're seeing that next year, so that's something to keep your eyes on. For those that have only just started watching or are planning in the future, the official F1 calendar is on Formula1.com. There's also an app. The races are normally on Sundays and the time zones can be a bit tricky. However, the app does this for you. The app tells you in your time when the race is. Streaming and broadcast depend on the region. You can have F1 TV, ESPN, Sky Sports for the UK, etc. I tend to use Now TV because that gives me Sky Sports and I can cancel it when I'm not watching it. Following the drivers on social media, F1 Twitter can be a little bit toxic. However, it's great for on-the-go news and all the rumours and everything else involved. So, learning a few of the basic track names and famous corners adds to your enjoyment as well, such as Eau Rouge at Spa, Monaco's Fairmont Hairpin, all that kind of stuff. So, if you find F1 interesting and you just fancy, you know, all of that and it all sounds very fun to you, why not give it a go? Drop me a follow. I'm here to help you learn more about F1 as well as enjoy the sport, hear my quite unhinged comments from time to time. And next week, I think we're going to deep dive into some famous rivalries throughout the years of F1, as well as a little bit more history behind F1 and everything that it has to offer. So until then, I've been your girl Bex. This has been the Race Rundown, and I'll see you next week. Peace!